only getting better. This is our future endeavor. I can't wait to see the fight between Pac, Kenny, Omega. It's bound to be killer. The winner have to consider it will all be over quicker. Deliver the V trigger. It's picking up. Lucha Bros versus Young Bucks. Many have tried, none have outdone us. Name a top 10 team, none are above us. We've been working hard towards our goals.
All Elite family, let's get ready to podcast.
Hey, this is Cole Cabana. Check out the All Elite podcast. All Elite. Oh.
Welcome back, All Elite family, to another exciting episode of the All Elite podcast. I am your host, Andrew Kazir, and as always, I'm joined by my boy, Bitter Mark, All Elite wrestling fan, All Elite AJ. AJ, how are you doing?
I'm good. I've had a busy weekend. I was in Miami. I was in Orlando. I was visiting my grandpa. But it's all calmed down now, and I'm back to being in AEW mode.
That's cool, man. I'm happy to hear that you've had time to spend some time with family and do stuff like that. I've really just been busy working a lot, getting stuff set up for the website and the podcast, but other than that, really haven't been up to much. Been keeping my eye on AEW stuff. I'm super excited for tomorrow. We obviously get to watch the first episode of AEW Dark. I'm almost wondering how that show is going to go. We'll probably discuss that here in a moment, but first let's just discuss the first thing that everyone has been talking about this week. The ratings for AEW's first episode of Dynamite are in. They were better than many expected. They were right around what we had sort of discussed last week. They did 1.4 million viewers in total. They did about 800,000 in the top demographic that key advertisers and things like that are looking for. So they did really well, almost beating WWE Raw, beating SmackDown and NXT in those key demographics, which they are obviously not beating WWE in overall ratings and overall viewers, but in that key demographic where you're trying to sell advertising spots, it's huge. They're competing at the very least, and that's incredible, especially from just the get-go. A very good first show, but I don't even know if we expected that. Did you expect 1.4 and that huge key demographic number?
No. I didn't expect the key demographic number at all. I expect that to be relatively not double what I expected. And I was hoping, and I even told you this, I was hoping that it would get over 1 million. And I was resigned to think, when the first ratings were coming in, it's not going to be over 1 million. And I was like, well, they still did pretty good. And then they got 1.4. I didn't expect that at all. So my expectations got blown away and then some for this whole entire thing. The key demographic rating was just icing on the cake. I didn't expect them to do that well, where I think they doubled NXT's numbers, right?
Yeah, and I think the key part of that, too, is NXT was consistently doing 400,000. So it's not like they stole a huge number away from NXT. NXT almost remained consistent, if not rose a little bit in that key demographic for NXT's numbers, but they still weren't even touching what AEW managed to pull on the first week. And I think that's super, super key. And I think if they can continue to grow that number, which is something I almost expect based off of just the reaction to fans as far as other shows that have gone on this week. We're not going to get into detail about that on this show, but obviously you can see the disgruntledness in wrestling fans right now, where they're just not totally happy with everything that they're seeing, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. And well, I think with WWE anyways, especially, but with AEW, it's just so nice and it was so fresh. And I mean, just watching the show and comparing it to NXT, it was brighter, it was better, it was a bigger crowd. It felt like a real show for the first time in I don't know how long, because I haven't felt like I have an alternative.
As my time as a wrestling fan, I don't think I've seen something like this where it's been so produced big, so well, and so many fans, such a huge reaction to what's going on, such great matches.
TNA, hats off, but they were in a small arena too. They were in those Universal sound stages, which weren't small, but they weren't that big either.
And I'm just excited to see this formation of this stable and something new within wrestling that, it's obviously stables aren't new in wrestling, but to see the formation of a new group, new fresh faces, because LAX aren't necessarily known to the wider audience. Sammy Guevara obviously isn't known. Jake Hager obviously has a well-known background with WWE, Jericho as well, but these guys can get the rub from that, and who knows what we could see going forward. So I think that they did a really good job capping off their show, and I think that the other side has done such a bad job that we could see a rise in ratings. That's something I might expect in the next week or two.
Yeah, when you said that to me at first, I was going, no, I think it'll dip and then it'll rise again. Now I don't know, only because of how bad their WWE show Hell in a Cell was, but we're obviously not going to talk a lot about that. But now I actually think you're onto something and that you're going to be right about that.
Yeah, I just think the negative energy within professional wrestling in general has been so bad that people are going to be forced to tune into AEW just because there have been chants for AEW at the end of WWE shows and things like that, and that's just not a good look for WWE, and I think that obviously is a good sign for AEW, and that's why I think in the next week or two we could see a rise in the ratings that were already a surprising number.
No, absolutely, and I think you're right about that. Overall, I'm blown away by these numbers. I don't really have a lot to say. Like, oh man, they weren't what I was expect. They were not what I was expecting, but in the best way possible.
Yeah, it was definitely something new and fresh. And something also new and fresh, AEW announced today that they're going to be in Dallas or Fort Worth the first time in the Texas area on December 11th. I think this is a smart move, especially during the winter months, going south, introducing yourself to that Texas fan base where there's obviously a lot of loyal fans who are maybe more into the Lucha Libre style of wrestling, but I think there's a die-hard fan base for professional wrestling in Texas regardless, so...
There is, and New Japan did pretty good there, and they had a pretty big arena. They had to tarp some stuff off, or I don't know if they tarped it, but there was empty seats. But even then, they still did pretty well. I'm thinking AEW does a lot better, so I expect them to fill that arena pretty easily.
Yeah, me too. And I think another good part of going south for like the winter months is you have those diehard fans who are going to show up for these shows, so it won't be so hard to sell out during a time where people might not be as prone to go to professional wrestling.
Yeah, that's absolutely good. Like I didn't even consider that, but you're right. This is a better time to tour the South, and even if you're going, because if you go even west, then you're hitting LA, and that's still you're going to get a good turnout, which I wouldn't expect that to be too far off from Dallas. But I don't know. I think that's a smart move, but I don't think they're going to shy away from going north and mid South and going to those winter areas because I think people are going to come out no matter what.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think this is cool because we're obviously going to see the promotion of LAX big in this area. We're obviously going to see the promotion of Lucha Brothers. This might be one of the first times they were featured on a promo for a show that they're doing. So it's cool just to see like they're obviously targeting certain demographics as they go to certain parts of the country as well.
Yeah.
And in other AEW news, following last week's episode of Dynamite, Tony Khan did a post-show presser. It was really cool to see his perspective on how things went with the show and just to get his rundown on everything of the future. And he also had mentioned that we were going to see matches coming in the future, like match announcements throughout the week, which was something you and I had wondered about and had expected. And almost, I'm thankful he announced it because if he didn't, I wouldn't have even expected the announcements we got earlier today.
Yeah, I'm excited that this is going to be a continuous thing. And I was also really into that presser in general just because of how excited and happy Tony Khan was with that first show because it, I don't know, made me reassured that obviously he was going to play it that way no matter what, but it was cool to see that he was so stoked about that first show going well that it makes
Basically
you realize
as excited as we were, you know what I mean?
yeah, and that makes me think like, well, if the billionaire is that into it, then damn, this is obviously going to be something for a good amount of time.
And he had so much key information for us through that presser that was really awesome. I mean, obviously, there were some really bad questions. If you listen to the whole presser, you can go ahead and find those bad questions. I'm not going to go over those. But the good questions, I mean, talking about the dark matches that we saw earlier in the night and getting that information early on, straight off of Dynamite, we knew that the dark matches were going to be used for something.
Yep.
And then later on, they announced that they would be used for a show called AEW Dark, which is going to be featured on YouTube every Tuesday. And I'm just super excited to know that this show is coming. I don't know what to expect, how long it'll be, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 15 minutes. But I'm hoping the longer the better. But what do you think about that show, AJ?
I think it's a great idea. I mean, we were talking about it a lot, about the idea of a pre-show or a precursor show in some way. I didn't consider that it would just be dark matches that they're taping there, and I kind of like that a lot. I mean, I figured it would be something, but I thought maybe it would be live before the show or live after the show. Doing the dark matches and recording them it's like heat or velocity, right? And I think that's just a smart move. I think it's just a thing that worked so well and hasn't really been utilized in a long time.
Yeah, and it's just an extra bit of content and can be utilized, and like you said, in such a great way. And it like we said, we thought it was going to be a pre-show type thing, but it's not even necessarily a pre-show thing. It's more like they obviously record them before the show or after the show, but it feels like its own entity. It's not, because we're not watching it an hour before or an hour after. It feels like its own thing on a different day, which is pretty cool. I mean, you can obviously find the results online, but the matches themselves are what I'm interested in. One match we're going to see Darby Allin versus Cima. We're obviously not going to discuss who the winner is going to be, so you don't have to worry about any spoilers, but just the fact that that's one of the matches that I get to look forward to tomorrow night is I'm hype about that. Just obviously about the other Darby Allin news that we'll have to cover coming up, it makes the most sense in the world that Darby was featured on this now.
And being on YouTube, I think, gives you a good amount of freedom to play around with that time limit, or not time limit, but how long the show is going to be. If the dark matches didn't go that long, or if you don't have a lot to show, then the show is shorter. And it's probably that simple, which I think is a really good idea to put this on the internet.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing I'm super curious about, because the one thing that I do know about the Darby and Cima match is it's pretty long, in terms of a dark match at least. So the length of this match and being able to see it in its entirety is something that I'm hoping will happen, but who knows, depending on the length of the show and how they utilize it going forward. And I think that's one thing I'm most excited for. And they just have, it's a pretty stacked card for that first dark match, or that first dark show. They also have that SCU versus Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy and Marco Stunt match that we had talked about. There's a match featuring B. Priestley and Britt Baker, I believe, in a tag team match. So just quite a few good matches on a dark show that you might not expect that from.
No, you're right. And the SCU match in particular is one I've been looking forward to. And they've been hyping it up, too, on being the elite. And so it kind of makes sense that you would have it here. Though I was hoping we would see it on TV, and maybe we still will. But it's a lot more than I expected it would be. Like you said, it's clearly being used not just to give the expert guys their time. It's being used to build guys up who they didn't have time for.
Yeah, and just talking about building guys up, Tony Khan, during his interview or his post-show presser, he talked about how there would be a number one contenders match for Chris Jericho in Philly. And that was something that I was really interested in. We didn't really get any information about it until earlier today. And then we found out that it would be Darby Allin versus Jimmy Havoc in a one-on-one match where the winner's going to receive a world championship. And like a world championship match against Jericho and Philly, which blew my mind to find out this was the match that was going to happen. But now that I think about it, just knowing that we at least utilized Darby, because I was like, Darby hasn't even really been seen, Havoc hasn't really even been seen, unless you've watched the pay-per-views. But then I thought about, well, Darby will be on Dark, so there's that. Havoc, I don't believe, showed up on Dark. I'm not too sure.
No, I don't think so. And if he did, we don't know about it, but Jimmy Havoc is the weird one for me here. Darby Allin
did pick up a win in that triple threat match at the last pay-per-view.
Yeah, he did, but it still doesn't feel right, does it? Am I alone here?
Well, no, you're not alone. My biggest pet peeve with any of this, I would take either one of these guys against Pac.
Yeah,
The lack of Pac in this, and the idea of presenting wins mean something, and this, that, and the third. Pac has just beat a guy who was in a match for the World Championship and a guy who was in the tournament. Like, Pac has essentially won the tournament all over again because he beat Kenny Omega and he beat Adam Page, two guys who were very prominent in deciding who would become the first AEW World Champion. So it's to me, I wonder if Pac's maybe going to get involved, beat both of these guys down or something like that. That wouldn't be too surprising to me.
I would like that a lot, because at this point, why wouldn't you have him in there? And not only wouldn't you have him in there, I just don't. This only makes sense to people, like you said, who have been watching the pay-per-views. I don't think the TV audience is going to bite enough for Jimmy Havoc versus Darby Allin, and I'm happy to be proven wrong.
I think that they could, based upon how much time these two will get. I don't think we're going to get very many more matches announced for this show, so I think that's the one bright spot. Like, we'll obviously see Darby and Havoc be featured pretty prominently. But I don't know. Like, Darby has done a great job, but Darby losing to Havoc, I mean, in the triple threat match, albeit, but still, he has a loss to him. I don't know. I just don't know how I feel about this being the first number one contenders match.
Me neither.
We'll have to wait and see. I think it'll be a great match, so there's that at the very least.
And I
But
get that you don't want Pac versus Jericho because you got two very strong heels against each other, but why not? I don't know. I'm not gonna be mad about it. And you don't. And obviously, if you had Darby go over Pac, that looks pretty sick, doesn't it?
And the one thing I will say is, at the very least, they're giving these guys an opportunity to shine and an opportunity to really, because these guys are two pretty unknown guys, and if they can come out and have a great match and Darby can have a stellar performance, I don't see
That's
a
true.
problem with him coming out and having that match with Jericho and maybe having another draw, or maybe like just coming up barely short to Jericho in like a 19-minute match where Darby gets a chance to really shine.
I'd like that.
So
Broadway Darby Allin.
I think that the only way I'm really going to enjoy this is either if Pac gets involved or if Darby comes out as the victor. I'm very behind Darby, so I see no reason for him to be someone who gets an opportunity and falls short. He's done a great job with every opportunity he's had so far, but it was just something that caught me off guard as the first number one contenders match. I was honestly expecting, I put it on Twitter last night, I was expecting MJF versus Pac. And something that would make a little bit more sense to me in terms of both guys won on last week's show. They won on the first TV show. I think the only two singles matches from last week's show, so as far as men. So that's, to me, that made the most sense, but this is fine.
It's not I'm not like going, oh, this is the worst thing in the world. I don't want to see Jimmy Havoc. I'm a little taken back. I didn't expect it to be this, but that said, I don't think it's going to be bad at all. And now that I think about it, like you said, with the time they're going to be given, this is probably going to be pretty good. And we know the two work well together, so yeah, this is probably going to be a good way to get them over, like you were mentioning.
Yeah, they're being given an opportunity, and whoever wins will obviously then get another opportunity to just continue to look good and look like a star, and that's a big point of contention for me. So I wonder who is going to be the one to come out victorious at the end of everything, but I'm excited that this at least is a match that we'll get to see this week. And then that really wraps up the news, but let's jump into our Being the Elite recap. AJ, of course, watched Being the Elite this week, so he will give us the rundown of the show and his thoughts, and I actually watched it as well, so I'll give my thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, and it was a pretty good episode this week, I think. And the first segment, we had the Young Bucks coming in to see Kenny Omega, and because Kenny Omega's been doing this gimmick where he's been broken and all off and kind of crazy, they've been asking, can we count on you? And he's just going, of course you can count on me. That's a stupid fucking question, he said, I think. I don't know if that was verbatim, but he said something along those lines. And then he says, we're just getting started. And Nick Jackson freaks out and he's like, what did you just say? What did you just say? Because that's the catchphrase, I guess. I didn't really pick up on that. And then they leave and he's just standing there going, I'm just getting started. And so I guess that was an indicator that the gimmick is not over, or it's not over as in done, but we'll see. What did you think about that? Because in the end, we have a very stark contrast, which we'll get to. But I'm kind of interested if that means this gimmick is going to stay around.
I appreciate at the very least the story aspect of it, but what I don't necessarily love about it is that we have to tune into this show that maybe not, like literally not everyone is tuning into. We now know the numbers of people who are willing to tune into the live TV show, and you can see the views on YouTube, and that's not to slight them, but when I watched it, it was at 50,000 views, albeit they just uploaded it this morning. There's plenty of time for people to tune in. It's tough to me because I really like the storytelling aspect of it, but it's not really something that we're going to get on a live show. So and they don't really promote it on the live show either. I think maybe if they start promoting it this week, because I think this week's episode was a step up from maybe what we've seen in the past few episodes of Being the Elite in the past few months. It was a step up, so maybe it's something they'd be more comfortable promoting. But other than that, I don't know. I think that there were aspects of this whole.
I agree with you. I think anything on Being the Elite, at least at this, I'm not talking about before, because before I know we gave it a lot of flack and we went back on that flack. So, but anyways, I think anything now going forward, story-wise, should be additive. It should not be something where it's like, oh, you didn't watch Being the Elite. At this point, it should be, oh, you didn't watch Dynamite. That should be the phrase that would get spun around. Second segment, we got the Young Bucks, and there was they were at a production truck. They were talking about the Photoshop shirt, and Nick Jackson said it was one of the best sellers of the week. The thing I noticed here was obviously they had really bad red lighting. I don't know if this was
is
a
a
jab.
straight jab at the Hell in the Cell
That's a
match
quick
last
jab.
night.
That's a very quick, like, iMovie edit, isn't it? That happened very.
I don't know. They were talking about how they were finishing editing it last night, so I don't.
Okay.
So it made sense. I was like, okay, whatever. I'm over that type of stuff.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that was. Let's not get into that one too much. We get a Road to AEW on TNT segment, a fake one with Orange Cassidy being interviewed, and the interview is going by so quickly that they have to keep the interviewer in being like, "Oh, what are your goals in All Elite Wrestling?" And he's just like, "All of them," and things like that. And it's really great, and I love this segment. I thought it was really funny and well done, which I usually don't always love the segments like this, but this one is really good.
Yeah, really well done job by Orange Cassidy, and they do a good job with guys like him who are more of a comedic value type thing, but they don't necessarily shove it down your throat on TV. It's something that is more on the YouTube show. So, and I enjoyed it, so it was good.
Then we got Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus with Jay and Silent Bob. Luchasaurus and Jason Mewes are walking by and they see Kevin Smith and Jungle Boy talking to each other, or kind of just hand signaling to each other. And as they do that, they go, "These two guys never fucking shut up." And they go, "I know, every day I have to deal with it." So Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy leave with the way they always do, on the shoulders. Then Jay and Silent Bob try to do it, but they fall over and hurt themselves. And I thought this was...
Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus continue to constantly have such a fun segment on Being the Elite that no matter who tunes in, if you come away from this show not being a fan of these two guys, I don't necessarily understand how that happens, because they fit so well with Jay and Silent Bob that I was super impressed, and I really enjoyed that.
It was very good, and it almost made me think like they should put this on the AEW YouTube channel, because you're actually having a celebrity power here, kind of.
Yeah, there's good celebrity drawing there, so yeah.
Thought that was really good. The next segment did not love. It was the librarians, and they're FaceTiming, and Leva Bates is at the Library of Congress.
Library of Congress.
She's super excited. She's so stoked, and Peter Avalon is not. And he was supposed to be there apparently, and he's not there. And then she says, "Let me go show you." I wonder why too. And then she goes, "Let me show you all the greatest library ever. Come on." And then she goes in, and then that's it. That's the end.
Which was fine. We didn't need to go in depth with that. So that was good.
We definitely did not. You're right. So let's move on before I say something. Segment 7, more Photoshop shirts, and Matt spilled coffee on his and it's gone, but Nick had a backup. And then right after he has the backup and he makes him put it on, MJF shows up and he starts advertising for the MJF scarf, because there aren't enough fancy scarves in the world, and MJF, don't worry, made one for people who can't afford big fancy scarves, and it's the official MJF scarf, and people can buy it. And Nick became furious because he didn't think of it first.
What a guy.
Yeah, and then he put it on Matt. Let's see, segment 8, it was all about behind the scenes. We got to see the Elite, and they're watching the Rio versus Nyla match, and they're marking out, which is really cool to see. And we got to see, I think, what else was there? There was Nyla Rose stuff. We got the Elite taking the stage.
The behind the scenes and all of that stuff.
Yeah, we saw Dustin Rhodes running out to help the Elite whenever they were down.
The one part I didn't like about that was I just wish they had started it when he was already running, not waiting to run.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, you really could tell and get the feeling of like, oh, he's
giving a cue.
This, yeah, like go now. And so outside of that, I really enjoyed that, and I thought it was cool to sort of get like it was essentially a whole story told throughout this episode. Where in the beginning we're like, "Kenny, are you gonna be good for us in this match?" And he's like, "Duh, man! Like we've been planning this for so long. Obviously, man. Like of course." Yeah. And then they go out and they're like a solid unit, and they're all ready, and he's like, "Yeah." And then the second that like Moxley appears, you can see it in his face in the episode of like Dynamite when he like is shocked that he's behind him and he could feel the energy and everything. You can essentially feel the shift without him seeing Moxley's there, and I think that's supposed to be like the switch of the flip of the switch essentially for Omega.
Absolutely.
And through that, I think that's interesting storytelling, because then obviously we come back with Omega backstage talking to the Bucks basically about what happened, and they're not mad, they're just disappointed. But
It was big, and that was a great line. I know it's like, oh, that's the classic
super
line.
cliche.
But it was actually really apt here because it just made Kenny, whenever they left, I liked that line because whenever they left, it was just Kenny by himself and he just went, and I was like, yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. Because Kenny is so down on his luck right now that like everything he's doing is wrong.
And he just has to beat Moxley, I feel like, is the story now, where he's just getting attacked and going through all of this stuff and not being able to keep focused on what he needs to keep focused on. And then like just and we almost stepped over the
Adam
announcement
Page,
of Adam Page and Dustin. And that was such an interesting segment as well, because we have the Young Bucks coming backstage and they're like, where were you, man? How could you let this happen? And Page is like, it's such a creative and like a simple way to tell the story, but something I loved.
I really loved this. This was the segment that stood out the most to me.
But you forgot about it.
I didn't forget about it. We jumped it. But listen, like you said, it was so good. And you have Dustin there just going like, they're right. I was out there and I'm usually not here that late and this and that. And just him going, I'll make it up to you. And that genuine, I don't know, remorse.
This made me almost wonder if he's going to turn and somehow join that stable.
Do you think? Because that would be a crazy turn.
But I think it would be, and I'm scared to see how it would play out, because it's sort of like too soon type of thing to do something like that.
It is, after the Jericho match.
Yeah, because he just faced Jericho, and I think that's my biggest thing. If he hadn't faced Jericho yet, and maybe it had been Omega or something against him, but instead he had already faced him, so it's weird for him to then go underneath Jericho.
Because obviously people are thinking MJF is going to turn, and he even had in his post-match presser, it seemed like he was going to turn.
That was
he was
cool
saying,
too.
I was getting my ice bath, I think he said, and shit like that. And so if anybody's going to turn, it obviously seems like MJF, but that's why I think you could be right, is like maybe they're trying to trick me.
The way they've been just pushing the idea that the Bucks weren't there for him, and there's so much that you could tell for an easy way for Jericho to have convinced Adam Page to maybe come over to the dark side or the wrong side, or he gets put maybe just in the middle where you have to make him decide, which I think is an easy and good story to tell as well. It's something that's been done in wrestling a lot. You put one face in the middle of some friends who haven't been helping him as long, and maybe a new partner like Jericho who could be like, well, I could help you out, man, if you follow me. How far have they really gotten you? And something like that. And I think that would be an interesting way to tell maybe another story on AEW TV.
Yeah, no, definitely would. I don't know if what's going to happen, and that's another part of why I'm excited about this and this stable. And I know a lot of people were poo-pooing it, but really it's only interesting to me, and I think it's only going to open the doors to a lot more opportunities.
And it'll get more interesting over time, I think, and it's just something that's new and fresh, and I think, like, this match creates something new and fresh. Like I tweeted out, both of these guys on each side, Sammy Guevara and Adam Page, desperately need victories. Like, it doesn't really matter if Jericho wins, and it doesn't really matter if Dustin loses, but it does matter if either Guevara or Page lose, because both have been on quite the losing streak. So, again, AEW is pushing this idea of wins and losses meaning something. So to me, I almost need to see Guevara pick up a win. I could see him being the one who happens to take a fall, but I would really like to see him being the one to almost pick up the win over Dustin.
Yeah, I think that's the best option, because really Sammy G is just coming off of, I think, I don't want to say more notable loss, because obviously Adam Page was the title, but more recently more notable because it was on TV. It was the first match, and that match with Cody is going to stick out in people's minds for a while, especially because he turned on the same show. And so I think you really, now that he's hot, because now is definitely the time where he's the hottest, you really want to have him get a win.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's the biggest point, and something that's very important, and we'll obviously have to see going forward. And just, I guess, speaking of that match, let's jump into all four matches that they have announced. As we already spoke about, we have Darby Allin versus Jimmy Havoc in a number one contenders match. Who do you think is going to pick up the win in this one, AJ?
I got to go Darby, and I hope it's Darby too.
Me too.
It just makes sense.
Yeah, Darby. He's had the best showing overall, I think, out of all of the new faces in AEW.
Yep.
So in that respect, he's the most deserving. I don't believe he was the one who took the pinfall in that match with Jimmy Havoc, which makes it make a little bit more sense why this match is happening. I believe it was Janela who took the pinfall, so it makes sense, and I do think that it's going to be Darby.
Yeah.
And then in the next match, we have the Young Bucks versus Private Party in a first-round match for the World Tag Team Championship. Who do you got in this one?
The Young Bucks. Although if it was Private Party going over, I would be stoked. I would be like, oh man,
it'd be one of the best choices.
Yeah. That said, I don't expect it to happen, and I don't expect the Young Bucks to lose to such a new team, so I'm going to guess it's going to be the Young Bucks.
Yeah, unless there's some type of interference or something from LAX playing an outside part, I think that's what it's going to be. We also have Shawn Spears, your boy, versus Jon Moxley in a one-on-one match.
Yeah.
Who knows if this match will even get off the ground, but if it does, who do you got?
It's got to be Jon Moxley, right? If it's not, unless Kenny Omega snaps and interferes, then I could see it being Shawn Spears. But it's kind of weird because this one, Shawn Spears kind of needs a win too, doesn't he? And I don't think that win should be against Jon Moxley. I'm just saying he definitely is in a position where if he doesn't pick up a win sometime soon, he's going to start looking, I don't know, less and less of a big, interesting character.
Yeah, I don't really just see Shawn Spears as being much coming off of this match with a loss, but who knows? I think that it will be Moxley overall in the long run.
Yeah.
And then the last match, the one we were just talking about, we've got Dustin and Hangman Page against Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara. Who do you think is going to win in this one?
I'm going to go Jericho and Sammy Guevara, not just because of the reasons we talked about, but because you have the new hot stable. A common mistake that the other company makes is taking the new hot stable and having them lose immediately. I do not think AEW is going to do that mistake. I think they're going to get as much heat on the new stable, the new heel stable, as possible before they finally lose.
And I think that's such a good point, and I hope you're right just because of the history of stables and how you have to establish them as like really strong and tough. And that's where I almost again think we could see Hangman Turn in this early, and it just becomes like a beat down on Dustin, and who knows how the rest of the show plays out if the Young Bucks are beat down, if Omega's busy dealing with Moxley, and Cody against those three alone would be up against a lot. So I think there's a lot that could be told there. I can't totally full on buy that I think Adam Page is going to turn, but I think it's something to keep an eye on, and I think it might be one of those things that I'm able to be like, oh man, we talked about it on the podcast, but I think it's just something they're hinting into a lot, something that they're definitely teasing at the very least, where I think it could become that he's stuck in the middle type thing.
I don't think it's going to be, but let me just throw it out there. It could be Dustin. Dustin could turn, which would be equally as it would have.
That would be fine.
Yeah, because you have Dustin being an old WWE guy, Chris Jericho is an old WWE guy, maybe have camaraderie there, but
it does make the lot less sense based upon how he did get involved at the end of last week's brawl. But I think that's where you might be thinking too much, and they could get ahead of themselves doing something like that. But it's definitely a possibility where you tease like Hangman, and it becomes Dustin on the other end. But definitely, I hope not. I like the idea of keeping that camaraderie between Dustin and Cody for a while, as long as they possibly can, because Dustin can consistently be a key part for Cody in his storytelling, as long as they're not foes, even if they're not teammates. Like, if Cody's ever starting to turn a little bit, you have his brother being like, hey man, you shouldn't do it. And then when he does full on turn, like, it's way easier for him to just attack his brother. I think that's the best way that they could tell that kind of story. So I'm hoping that's not what it is. And who knows, maybe it'll just be a clean finish. I wouldn't be too surprised at that. I wouldn't be too surprised to see Sammy Guevara or Jericho pick up a victory, just because you obviously have to continue putting over Jericho's finish. It's something that they've done so well, but I think it'll just continue to be done. And I would almost think it would be awesome to see Jericho hit that on Dustin, and then Guevara hit some type of flippy move. Boom, 1, 2, 3.
That would be sick. And you're right. I do love that finish.
Yeah, but overall, the one key point, I think, is we have a very exciting just the 4 matches we have announced for Boston for our second episode is exciting. Like, from top to bottom, I'm really excited for this card. I'm really excited to see the second week of AEW and what they have to give to us. And
we got another card.
And they did a good job utilizing that stable and utilizing Hangman and Dustin. Like, I would have never in a million years predicted this match. never in a million years thought this was the one that they were talking about when Tony Khan was saying, hey, we're going to have some announcements throughout the week. Never in a million years thought this was going to be an announced match. But after it was announced, and as we continue to talk about it and I think about it, I'm like, this could be really fun. And it could be, I wouldn't mind Hangman turning. I don't necessarily see how much more over he can get as a face based on the amount of losses that he's taken. So
yeah, that's a good point. And as we talk about it, I'm kind of getting more and more open to the idea,
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I would be down with that. But we gotta wait and see. But overall, I'm definitely super excited, and I'm super excited that we're just getting match cards for the shows.
Yeah, I mean, based upon the fact that it's a 2-hour show, we have 4 matches. Last week they were able to comfortably fit 5 matches, so I would maybe even expect another match being announced during or at the end of Dark or something like that. But if not, 4 matches, I'm totally cool with that.
Me too.
And then going into Philly, we already have 2 announced championship matches. We have the Women's Championship and the World Championship being defended in Philly in just 2 weeks. So
we'll know, crazy.
We'll know who Jericho's defending against, and that's where I almost anticipate like maybe a triple threat women's match or something. They have to have a number 1 contenders women's match, right?
Yeah, no, they definitely have to. And so when is the Philly show? Is the Philly show the one after the next?
Yeah.
So they might be announcing that.
Let me double check because I'm almost positive. But yep. The Wednesday, October the 16th is when they're in Philly. So this show and then the next one, and the big point I made about that when we were talking about it earlier is that they have to do at least 2 tag team tournament matches that week, if not all 3. If they don't do 2 this week, they have to do 3 next week because of the fact that they already announced the semifinals are on the 23rd. So either this week's show is going to be really stacked with 2 at least, or there would be 3 tag team matches on this show. So there either be 3 on this show or 3 on the next show.
Yeah, and maybe the number 1 contender for the women's is just going to be Britt Baker, but if that was the case, I feel like they would have said that.
That might be something that's based off of a result on Dark. I honestly don't know who won that women's tag team match, so maybe whoever picked up the pinfall victory in that women's tag match will be someone who's announced as the potential number 1 contender. But yeah, otherwise I think they'll have to do some type of number 1 contendership announcing. I don't think that Britt just being like on the commentary for that women's championship match justifies her being the first number 1 contender. But I am excited that there's such a stacked card essentially lined up.
No, me too. And I'm way excited for the next show. And I'm more excited for Philly, but I'm just as excited for this, which is a great sign.
Yeah. So that wraps up all the matches that we do have announced for Boston. Let's jump right to the Lucha Mask, where we have a couple of different topics that me and AJ have decided to talk about. Let's go ahead and pull out the first topic from the Lucha Mask. AJ, your silly drum roll. Alrighty. And related to our previous discussion, actually, what type of women's number 1 contenders match could you see being made? What women do you think would be featured in that match?
Now, I know, because I wanted to say immediately, my head's going, oh, Yuka Sakazaki is so good, but I don't think she's signed exclusively, so I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say Britt Baker and Bea Priestley, because I feel like they have a lot to prove. I feel like that tag match they had, where it went so badly because of her concussion, I feel like these are 2 women who can have a really great match with each other, and given the chance where obviously nothing goes wrong, I think they will. So those would be my 2 girls.
Yeah, and I think one of the most exciting parts about a potential number 1 contenders women's match, or the reason that I'm confident it's going to happen, is because if this were in another company, you would expect maybe even just a straight rematch from the first women's championship match, where then I would be very worried about Rio's chances at retaining. But in this case, I really think that it's going to be something like you said, featuring Britt Baker or Bea Priestley or one of them. I don't necessarily believe any of the other Joshi women have been featured as prominently as Rio has in order to become that prominent thing. But I do also think that maybe if they want to develop this story of Rio being like a monster killer, that they might even roll out Awesome Kong for the second week, have her come and have a match against maybe Allie or somebody, just pick up that victory and get that number 1 contenders match. So and that would be, if it might be too quick, because again that match would then be the following week, and I don't know how quickly I want to see Rio go over 2 like very dominant women, but it would be an interesting story.
You know who else they have who has the potential to be a very big star? Penelope Ford, and I keep forgetting that
Yep.
Penelope Ford is around, and she could absolutely be I don't want to say that she's perfect to be a top heel, but I no, she is perfect to be the top heel woman. And I know B Priestley is supposed to kind of fit that role, but I think Penelope Ford would just do a better job, or maybe Alley Cat, like you said,
Well,
but Penelope
they
Ford,
also have Priscilla Kelly, the girlfriend of
yeah,
Darby Allin. She's someone that I could see fitting very well into just maybe not like she could have a very good match with Britt Baker. That would be very fun and passable as like a number one contenders match. So
yep,
who knows exactly what direction they're gonna go? I just hope that they do something of a number one contenders match and not just throwing someone into that first match with Rio, because there's no one who stands out. Britt Baker stands out because of
yeah.
how they've positioned her, but outside of that, she hasn't really racked up a ton of wins or anything where I'm sitting here saying she's the one. No, there's really no one in the women's division that I would say is the one to challenge Rio, so they
Yeah.
need to do something.
I agree with you.
And I also don't see them going a full week without a women's match, so you'd have to expect something.
Yeah, something's going to happen, and I'm excited for whatever that announcement is, whatever they're going to do.
Yeah, man, so let's go back to the Lucha bag. The Lucha Mask. I always do that every week. All right. Should AEW cut back on the references to WWE? So obviously, like I said, the red was a direct reference to WWE in that Hell in the Cell match. And it's not a bad thing. But then they also Moxley during his when you're asked questions, you have to respond to them. But I believe during most of those Comic-Con interviews that they did, Moxley straight up said that the congratulations from WWE was like a backhanded, snide comment.
Totally
Jericho
was.
essentially said the same thing, and while it was, I don't know. And I think that's where WWE is setting these guys up in a position where they have to respond to that, and you almost look away saying, well, obviously it's backhanded, because from the public's perspective or whatever, it's just like, oh, cool, that was cool of them to do.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna lie, when I read it, I mean, granted, yes, it's like a backhanded thing, but it was still like, okay, cool,
I
if
didn't
this
think
is how
that
you're gonna
much
run
of
it.
either.
Like,
I thought it was just WWE being WWE. I didn't put that much stock into it, but I do get why they would feel the need to respond. I'm not. I do think. Let me just answer the question. That yes, they need to stop referencing WWE so much. At
Because
this
you
point, it
don't-
doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, that was something that I said on social media yesterday. It was that they don't have to. Let WWE continue to bury themselves. There was 3 shows last week out of the 4 that WWE put out that were so bad that all of social media was just crapping all over it.
Yep.
Granted, the one on Wednesday night is the one that is really good and people aren't crapping over, and that's the one you're going to compete with. So referencing all these other bad shows isn't even doing you any favors, in my opinion. Like, there's just no reason. Let them continue to kill off their fan base on Mondays and Fridays. Continue to have this back-to-back war with NXT, which is fine because you're both putting out fantastic products. There's no reason to complain about it. You know, It's a fun, awesome thing every Wednesday, but there's no reason to continue to lean into everything that WWE does bad and have to make like a haha joke about it, because it does get redundant after a while. But what I will say is we've probably had this discussion at least one other time, and since then, like the red reference, the red tint reference, I wasn't like, oh, this is too much. I was like, oh,
Yeah, no,
they didn't overkill it. It was whatever. It was fine, and you were like, oh, a little tongue in cheek, haha. My biggest issue more so has to do with like these guys bringing, and Jericho brought it up on his podcast and everything. Just let them give you their congratulations and keep it rocking, like whatever.
Yep. And I think that's honestly the best response there is just let them do it. Because like you said, they're burying themselves. You don't have any work to do. They're going to do a fine job. And Vince McMahon is only getting older, and he's only going to have more stupid ideas. I don't think you have a big thing to worry about. If you want to worry about anything, worry about NXT. And when you worry about that, just worry about putting on the better show.
Yeah, and I think that's my biggest point, is that all they have to do is put on a good show, and people are going to tune in. Like, it doesn't have to be I mean, obviously, you can see, based upon the ratings and the numbers, it's not like they stole all of NXT's viewers, so it's like there's obviously a strict viewership for each one of these programs, so it's fine. You don't have to try and, like, go to war with NXT even. You can just, like, let it rock, because you don't have to make a reference to, and like I said, again, this being the Elite reference and everything, it wasn't too much. It's just been like so many and so long that it's like, okay, we don't have to do this every time.
No, you're right.
And I think my biggest point of that is because everything else on TV and everything else throughout being the Elite is so good, and it's been such an enjoyable experience watching it, that I don't think they need to do that anymore. And WWE's been so bad that you can just say, you don't have to do that. They've been so bad. You're good.
Yep. No, you're 100% right about that. It just becomes, like you said, redundant, that really it's pointless and you're just beating a dead horse.
Yeah. So, and for our last question from the Lucha Bag, Lucha Mask, I can't get it. What rating do you see AEW pulling in 3 months? Now, we obviously saw a fantastic rating this first week. Let's take ourselves on a time machine down the line 3 months where it's really just a comfortable thing that people should be used to either watching or not watching on Wednesdays.
I want to be optimistic, honestly, and I want to say it's still going to be over 1 million. I expect somewhere between 1 million to 1.5. You know what? Let's just be idealistic and optimistic. I'm going to say 1.5 just for hopes and shiggles that I really think that this is going to be an upward trend now.
I'm going to take your optimism one step further and say that within 3 months, they're pushing like 1.8, 1.9, almost 2 million. Not because anything like super spectacular, not because they're like obviously the stories are just going to be good. They're good to great. Everything's going to be good to great wrestling. And the other product is going to continue to just be or bad or not. They've shown me so much within the last week that I'm so confident that it's not going to get good. That
I'm not interested in that.
I'm very well. I'm interested in it. I'll give NXT some benefit of the doubt. I've been so into AEW that's the reason I haven't really been that into NXT. Fair. So I'll say that. Like, I just haven't had the time to pay that much attention to NXT. But I will say that that's a great show. I've had no problem with saying that there were great matches on that show. But throughout the rest of the products, like Raw, SmackDown, the pay-per-view last night, it was all so bad that I'm so comfortable in saying that I see them pushing away enough fans, and enough fans are going to continue to hear about AEW and continue to see like tweets and everything on social media on Wednesdays, and they're going to tune in, and it's going to be a fan base that continues to grow upwards of, I would say, nearing 2 million within 3 to 6 months. So if I'm saying a straight number within 3 months, I would say 1.8.
That's fair.
That's super optimistic, and who knows, they could even peak at something 1.6, 1.7 within the next week and drop back down. But I see it being a steady increase over time because it's just been so bad. If you're tuned in to the WWE product and you're paying attention to what's going on, or you see something on social media even about it, it's just been so just not something that I'm interested in watching. And you can see it as like a universal thing.
Yeah. No, you're right. And what I meant about NXT wasn't so much that, these past shows have been boring. I would say they haven't done anything to hook me, but also I don't foresee NXT being better down the line. And I also do foresee that 3 months down the line, you are going to pull viewers from one of those shows. Like, one of those shows is obviously going to have a better consistent program, and so the people on one end might start tuning into the other. And so if my thinking is correct, it's going to be a small arena with the matches getting increasingly more stale and more difficult to put together.
That's going to be the biggest thing, is if they increase their arena size. But we don't have to get too much into that. I just generally think that in terms of like AEW and how well they're going to do, and I honestly think just Wednesday nights in general are going to be so entertaining on both sides that both sides are going to grow over time. And I don't see it being like a huge war of, we're pulling from them or they're pulling from us. It's like, we're both pulling from SmackDown and Raw, and then those fans who don't care about that product are choosing between us right now. And I almost see that as being something that will continue over time, because it's been so just or bad, even with such hot products, like even the hot thing with the Fiend and everything. They've been able to just fumble the ball enough times that I'm comfortable with saying that I see AEW's growth being exponential over the next few months. Like, it's not going to be something that slows down. I don't see the first week as being an anomaly, and I don't see anything bad enough on that first week to turn off like a chunk of it. I see it being more so like it was good enough to make other people say, it's worth tuning in for. And that big rating is something that I think could help a lot. Like, people are interested in things that other people are interested in. It's the fear of missing out on what everyone else is checking out.
Absolutely.
And I think that the more that it gets that trending thing on social media and gets the ball rolling on that, like, it's going to continue to grow. So I'm really comfortable in saying that. Like, as far as what I think their rating will be, I don't think it's going to go below 1 million. Like, at really any point in the foreseeable future. I could easily be proven wrong this week, but I also don't think that would be too bad as long as they're not dipping like below 900,000. So
yeah, I agree with that.
But yeah, man, overall, I think that the ratings are going to be something that will continue to grow over time and be something that fans are more excited about. But honestly, like, and it's going to be the alternative fact, like the fact that it's an alternative. That's the reason that so many people tune in and like want to check out this new product.
Yeah.
But that really wraps everything up for us this week. Go ahead and plug your social media, AJ.
You can follow me at Big Match AJ on Twitter, and you can follow me on Instagram at AJ the Fitzy.
And you can always follow the podcast on Twitter at All Elite Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at All Elite Everything. Check out our Facebook, facebook.com/All Elite Pod. Check us out on Discord, discord.io/All Elite Podcast. You can also check out our website, alleliteeverything.com, for recaps to being the elite and stuff like that. We'll also have recaps to Dynamite every week, being something that we're doing going forward. So just check that out. And until next time, see ya.